Hey, this is Farah from Empower DC. I'm here to talk about the Rental Act and the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. Yesterday at the City Council, they were going to have a first vote on the Rental Act. The Rental Act is a huge bill. It covers eviction, public housing tenant rights, a rewrite of the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, and more. The council decided not to consider the Rental Act yesterday and instead to postpone it, and they'll have their first vote is planned for July 28th. So I want to talk about what is in the Rental Act related to the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, commonly called TOPA. We have some major concerns with the Rental Act right now. It related to TOPA, it exempts affordable housing. It limits buyouts. It does not include a cooling off period to prevent bad actors, and it exempts new and renovated properties for 15 years from TOPA. So I'm going to talk about each of those a little more in detail. But first, I want to say what TOPA does. Through the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, when an owner wants to sell a building, they often negotiate a contract and have a contract with what we call a third party. They then give tenants an offer of sale and tell tenants that they can match the purchase price. The tenants can form a tenant association to exercise their TOPA rights. And then they can decide, do they want to choose the property to buy the property themselves, or do they want to choose a new purchaser? When tenants are choosing a new purchaser, they often, especially in affordable housing, they look for a purchaser who will provide affordability and make repairs. What the Rental Act says is that housing will be exempt from TOPA if a buyer promises to keep over half the apartments affordable to people earning 80% AMI or less. 80% AMI is about $123,000 for a family. That affordability equates to, with a one bedroom, they would have to have rents at $2,030 or less. For a two bedroom, $2,430 or less. This is not what most of us call affordable. And across the district, many neighborhoods have market rates that are less than this, meaning that it's not truly affordable housing. So an owner could just say, sure, I'll keep it affordable, meaning less than $2,000 a month for a one bedroom, and tenants would lose the ability to negotiate a better deal through TOPA because the owner would promise this and they wouldn't get TOPA rights. But what happens through TOPA is the tenants consistently preserve affordability and ensure renovations. So any exemption to affordable housing or subsidized housing through TOPA removes that ability of tenants to negotiate to preserve affordable and decent housing. Through TOPA, between 2006 and 2020, tenant associations added, extended, and preserved low-income housing tax credit affordability in nearly 8,000 units. They negotiated to maintain rent control, usually with repairs, in almost 8,000 units. They added affordability. They negotiated deals that added affordability using the Housing Production Trust Fund and other affordable housing programs in 3,620 units. And they maintained project-based Section 8 contracts in over 3,000 units of housing. Not one unit of subsidized housing was lost through TOPA. TOPA is an affordable housing preservation tool. So taking away TOPA is taking away tenants' ability to preserve affordable housing, and it's taking away a critical right from explicitly low and moderate income residents. I'm going to just show some examples of what TOPA has done. This is a Ward 8 example, which is really important because Ward 8 does not have a council member right now to represent them in this vote on the Rental Act. And their rights across Ward 8, tenants' rights would be removed from TOPA because most tenants pay under 80% AMI. This is just one example, Belmont Crossing, where the tenant association negotiated through TOPA with the new owner and decided that they would expand affordable housing from 275 units to 470 units. They're going to totally redo this apartment complex and make new affordable housing, including housing specifically for people leaving homelessness. In Ward 5, tenants similarly decided to add affordable housing, going from 34 units to 70 units of housing. And they're going to increase family size units for that are more than two bedrooms, which are hard to find, right? An example from Ward 2, the Wallach House. At this building, tenants preserved their project-based Section 8 affordable housing, and tenants were able to stay in Chinatown, predominantly Chinese tenants. This is where the vast majority of Chinese tenants in Chinatown live. So this is a super critical building that could have been lost without TOPA. In Ward 1, Tenants negotiated to create affordable housing, to add dedicated affordable housing, and to create family size units. Those things like family size units and specific renovations, green building features that were here, those don't happen outside of a TOPA negotiation. They're very unlikely to happen with a third party buyer, which is why we want to make sure that tenants in affordable housing maintain their TOPA rights. Another piece of this bill would limit buyouts during TOPA. This is when tenants get money in exchange for their tenancy. This is not something that we love to see in affordable housing, but our concern is that if buyouts are limited during TOPA, they will just move to before or after a sale, meaning that tenants will be trying to negotiate a payment without a tenant association, without an attorney, without tenant support. What we are suggesting is a cooling off period. That means that tenants and tenant associations can't assign their rights during the first 30 or 45 days of TOPA without speaking to an unbiased tenant support provider who can talk to them about their rights, about their options, about whether, how this deal would work and what other options they would have. We think that that will actually prevent bad deals and will prevent bad actors. Right now, the bill does not include the critical section on a cooling off period. Another piece of the bill is that it exempts properties that are built within the last 15 years. The exemption is written very broadly right now, though, and it would also exempt properties that are renovated. It would exempt properties that have been sold within 15 years. But even if it becomes just this 15-year exemption for new properties, we are again missing the opportunity for tenants to be able to negotiate through TOPA. This is an example of Park Place Apartments in Ward 4. It was a newly constructed building where tenants negotiated. They got rent concessions, they got accessibility improvements, and they were able to negotiate for a better property for these residents. So we want to make sure that tenant rights are not removed just because of how old a building is. There may be some specific exemption for new properties, but not for 15 years. So what can you do? The council has said that they're going to reconsider this legislation in 2 weeks on July 28th. In between that time, you can call the council and tell them to reject the changes to TOPA in the Rental Act. You can email the council through our email action, bit.ly/no rental act, and you can join us on July 28th. See you there.